knows I'm going to call him every year to come. So I appreciate him taking time out of his workday to come talk to you guys. So please be respectful. What he has to say, I can vouch for 100% as an adult. Ms. Nylas, Mr. Fox, we can all add to it. Seeing it firsthand, the importance of what he's going to talk to you guys about. You can talk to your parents about it, and they'll tell you how important it is. So it's really just please soak it in, listen. If you have a question, just raise your hand politely and ask. Nathan's pretty laid back and likes that interaction, but be respectful, please. And thanks again, Nathan. I'm going to go turn in lunch.
All right, thanks, Miss Carol. All right, so good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Morning. Yeah, there you go. Good. Hey, did everybody get the little 2-page handout? Might have been a short one. Hey, Mr. Hovis. All right, so we're good? Okay, cool. Okay, so as Miss Carol said, we're going to have fun today. I'm not a hired speaker, so I'm here just on my good behalf, and I hope that at least some of you take maybe 1 or 2 things that I talk about today. I hope that at least half of you don't fall asleep, but if maybe a third of you do, I understand. But we're going to try to stay engaged. We're going to try to have some fun. If you guys have any questions, don't worry about the person sitting next to you, because they're probably not as smart as you anyways, and they're probably wanting to ask the same question. Right? Okay, so make sure we ask questions. And then as Miss Carol said, I am Nathan Legladder. I'm with Golden Belt Bank. I've been there for quite a while. I live actually in the Hayes community, but I've worked over here for 13 years. And I get the pleasure of working with Mr. Honus' father, Randy. Randy. Yeah, Rudy. And Sandy Wade's granddaughter. And I went to high school with her mother, Danielle. I know his mother. So yeah, I know quite a few of you. And this is going to be my assistant right here. As called upon. As called upon.
Okay.
All right. And I went to high school with Miss Nylas' brother, and him and I, we don't open up the closet between him and I. So we had a lot of fun. All right. So I am here to talk to you about a really cool subject that may bore you now, but I promise you, in probably 12 months, you're going to look back and go, "Oh wow, I'm at that point in my life." Because the reason I'm here is, as you guys go to college, this is a very, very vulnerable point in your life when you're going to be entering the real world. People are going to be preying on you, because what are you going to need to succeed? You're going to need money. You're going to need credit. You're going to need money to get the things to get to where you want to be in life. The first one, for most of you, is going to be college, right? So we don't anticipate that all of you go to college, and we really don't want all of you to go to college, because there's plenty of other labor jobs out there that we need to fill. But all things aside, you are going to need some of these sources to get there. So starting off, the main topic I'm going to talk about is credit. I'm going to focus on credit. I'm going to talk about ways to build your credit, what things affect your credit, and we're going to start off with what credit is. So does anybody want to take a long shot and try to define credit, or just blurt out what you think credit is? And when I talk about credit, I'm talking financial credit, like credit report, credit bureau, a bank. Money. Okay, great start. Money, there's nothing wrong with that. Money. What comes with money? You use it to make payments, right? So you get money, use it to make payments. Payments are usually needed to be made on time. Okay, so you're supposed to make the payments on time. A lot of this will be new to you, because most of you probably aren't making payments. Some of you may be paying your cell phone bill. Kudos to you. But moving up here in life, you're going to be focusing on a lot of these things. So I just used a real simple Google this morning, and I Googled the definition of credit. It's just an online dictionary.com. And I'm just going to read off a couple definitions of what they think credit is, and I'm going to tell you what I think credit is. Because in my opinion, there's not a true definition of credit. But according to the dictionary, there may be. It's confidence in a purchaser's ability and intention to pay. Okay, just like I said, pay. You get money, you pay money back. Displayed by entrusting the buyer with goods or services without immediate payment. So typically credit is a trend. It's typically over 12 months, 24 months, 5 years. If you get a home loan, it's over 15 years, 30 years. So I am lending you money, and I'm entrusting you as a buyer to pay me back. That interaction and that timeline is what credit is. I am entrusting you. You are getting goods from me, and over 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, you're paying me back. Okay? Everybody kind of on board how that works? Give, take, and the transition in between the exchange of monthly or annual payments is a history of credit. Another quick definition is time allowed for payment for goods or services obtained on trust. Kind of the same thing. It's the time span between me entrusting you with my goods and then you paying me back. Okay, real basic. Okay, so everybody's on the same page. We're not totally confused. So my definition, and I kind of change it every year just as my mind wanders, but it's kind of the same thing. But a little bit different is my definition of credit is a buyer's or borrower's, it's a snapshot of their responsibility of their financial position. Kind of the same thing. Credit is a defined number, which we're going to get into what numbers of credit are, but it measures your responsibility. And that's something that this doesn't talk about. This talks about more the exchange based on you giving me something and me paying you back. But the way I look at it is it measures your responsibility. So I'm going to jump in real quick as a lender standpoint. So when someone comes in our office and applies to borrow money, one of the first things we do, other than just basic interaction with them, is we pull a credit report. And we're going to talk a lot about credit reports here in just a few minutes. So we pull a credit report. There's 3 numbers on there. We're going to talk about those in more detail. But those 3 numbers, they give us an instant judgment of that person. It's just like the old saying, don't judge a book by its cover, right? That's what we do. We see those 3 numbers. That person may have had the worst thing happen to them. They may have had a tragedy, an ill child that they had to take care of for a number of years, piled up a lot of debt. There's just a number of things that could have happened to make those numbers good or bad. But when they're bad, we instantly think, well, that responsibility of that individual is lacking. And so what does that do? First instinct, you just automatically think, maybe not the right person I want to be interacting with. No different than as we interact in society. We get those first impressions. Don't always try to judge off of those. But unfortunately in the financial world, and especially with modern technology where a lot of institutions are allowing you to apply for loans online, that's really not new. That's been going on for almost a decade now. But it's getting very, very prevalent right now. And so as you apply for those loans, you maybe don't have the chance to interact with a local bank, such as you are fortunate to be able to do here in Ellis or any of the other surrounding small communities. So you may be applying with an institution from your laptop in college, and the institution may be in California. It could be anywhere. And the first thing they're going to do is exactly the basics of lending, is they're going to pull your credit score. They're going to see your scores. If those scores are negative, if they fall below thresholds, which we're going to talk about thresholds, what are they going to do? They're just going to deny you. I mean, they don't care who you are. You're from a long ways away. You typically won't have that chance to explain maybe your unfortunate events or bad things that have happened in your life. So anyways, so a little basics on credit, a little bit of definition, I guess, overlay. Mine compared to maybe a formal dictionary definition. But nonetheless, we're all on the same page, correct? We all understand that that exchange, that time lapse, is what defines credit. So you've got these handy-dandy, very dated sheets. The reason these sheets are dated, and I always explain to the teacher that invites me, I always say don't judge me because these sheets look dated. But credit is basic. It hasn't changed. It's not scientific theory. It doesn't evolve. Credit is credit. It's based on a very, very solid base. And there's really no reason to change it. Someday someone will. I know it's going to happen. But at this point and for forever, it has not changed. So, very basic, 5 tips for improving the credit. And this probably isn't so much necessarily for improving. Maybe for you guys, it's going to be more for establishing the credit. We're going to talk about how you people probably right now do not have credit. So number 1, get copies of your credit report. Then make sure the information is correct. Cannot emphasize enough how important this is, and it's really actually very important for all of you. So you're able to go out and read down, it'll be the second paragraph. It gives you the website, very first line, I apologize. www.annualcreditreport.com. That's still the most valid site. I have a lot of students, because I talk at about 4 different schools. I have a lot of students that say, well, what about Credit Karma? What about this website? What about credit cards? Those are all great sources. I consider a lot of those sources for monitoring your credit. They'll give you a monthly update. They're going to give you little updates on what happened with your credit. This right here is the tried and true website. So you can go out there and every quarter, which would be every 4 months, or excuse me, every 3 months. Well, so it's actually every 4 months. You can go out there and you can pull a free credit report. I would actually recommend that each one of you, maybe with the assistance of a parent or a teacher or whoever you entrust as some counsel, goes out and pulls a credit report. You do have to create a brief login. You have to get your password like we all do with different things. But it would be very interesting to go out and see what's out there on you. It's going to have history on if you've had any employment. Once again, some of this stuff isn't going to pertain, but if any of you have worked for a formal restaurant, whether it's waitresses, cooks, laborers, whatever the case may be, it may have that information out there. It should have some type of a physical address out there. And then if you do have any type of accounts, it would have those. But can anybody answer why I'm thinking that you should go out there and look? I don't expect anyone to know this. If you do, I'll be very impressed. The reason I want you to go out, based on my assumption that you have no credit, is what if there is an account out there? So, what if somebody took your information without your willingness or knowledge and created an account? So I'm going to tell you a cool story about it's been a while ago, 5, 6 years ago. I was talking over at Hayes High, and this little guy in the back room told the craziest story in front of the whole class. It was actually very noble of him to let everybody know. But his mother had a very rough life, and she went on about her way in different substance abuse situations. And she actually opened up tons of accounts under his name and had all these fraudulent accounts under her own son's name. And I think he was a senior at that point in time. And he had his, I mean, really, I don't want to say his life, but his credit life was ruined. It was awful. And actually, he came to our bank and we consulted with him. And it had to go to a lot higher powers than us. It was a mess. And so this poor innocent individual who didn't know, this was the first time he ever heard about credit, other than he did have a little knowledge because he was getting all these notices of accounts that he didn't have. So that's why it's important at this point, especially where you all are going to be going out and applying for student loans. You may be applying to get your first car. Some of you may have borrowed money on your first vehicle with your parents on there as well. It would be very noble of you to go out and see what's out there. I hope for all of you there's really nothing, other than maybe something that you are aware of. Does anybody feel comfortable raising their hand if they've ever checked their credit, went to a credit report bureau? Okay. Has anybody, and if you're not comfortable, don't raise your hand. There's really, I don't think, too much confidentiality issue here, but has anybody went to a bank and borrowed money with their parents maybe on a small car loan? Right, we got all kinds of freshmen here. Perfect. That's great. That's why I'm here, because it's going to hit you in the face in like when's school get out? Tomorrow. It's going to hit you in the face tomorrow. When does school?
Your graduation is May 8th.
Yeah. So May 10th, this is all going to hit you right in the face, because you're going to be cut off from the school system. You're going out in the real world. Even though college is all fun and pretty, you're on your own time. So there's going to be a lot of truth to this. So what's everybody going to do in the next couple nights? Sit down with someone that you're comfortable with, an adult or a teacher, faculty, and go out and check this. It is free if you go to this website. So you can go out there, you can see, you can inquire. Wouldn't be a bad idea to print it, just as something to have in your file. So number 2, okay, we just already talked about this pretty much. Number 2, pay your bills on time. Sounds really simple, doesn't it? Right, Honus? Pay your bills on time? Yeah. The problem with this is the #1 problem with derogatory credit. And by derogatory, I mean bad or less than favorable. This is the #1 problem. So it's the simplest one on the line. It's only, 5 words basically? But this is the one that gets everybody, is pay your bills on time. it's impressive, especially working behind the scenes, to see how people will finagle due dates and grace periods. By grace periods, I mean your payment's due on the 1st, you have until the 10th. Those are grace periods because we know the world isn't perfect. You may be out of town, you may have family death, illness, just bad circumstances. But there's a lot of people that are very able to make those payments on time, but they work the system and they end up getting caught and they end up not paying their bills on time. That is pretty much the number one factor in a bad or good credit. All these add up and work to the ultimate number, but this is the one. And that makes sense, right? Okay, payment, I'm exchanging goods, you're giving me payment, okay? So that's number 2. So number 3, understanding how your credit score is determined. So this is the one part that I will retract my comment of credit is very basic. This is the one section where credit actually does get complex. This is a system that is designed kind of within the credit bureau systems, which are much bigger than anybody in this Ellis County region. And so this is where it gets a little bit more into the nuts and bolts. But these subtopics are very important. I'm going to hit on every one of these for you. Do you pay your bills on time? Okay, we've just talked about that. Goes in to give you just a little bit of narrative. But as you can see, that is the number one. That's the number one bullet there. And so they're doing that for good reason. Number 2, what is your outstanding debt? Okay. And let me make sure I don't jump ahead of myself. Yep. So what is your outstanding debt? So typically on this, they're not necessarily looking at, do you owe $5,000, $50,000, $250,000. That they are looking at that because they're wanting to know how much do you depend on borrowed money for your goods in exchange for your goods. But more so what they're wanting to know, and this is where we're going to get into just a little bit of the nuts of it, is they're wanting to know if you've got a credit card, because everyone in here is going to get a credit card in some point in life, unless you're just totally anti that, which is fine. You do what fits your model best. But if you get a credit card, we're going to use real simple numbers because it's early. So you get your $1,000 credit card, which is probably going to be common for most of you young adults. The credit system isn't going to go and enable you with a $30,000 credit card. I would sure hope not. If they do, tell me where I get one, right? But if you get a $1,000 credit card and you constantly, month after month, have $1,000 owed on that, is that good? No, there's nothing good about that, because that's telling the system that you're $1,000 short every month. Because why haven't you paid back that $1,000? So let's jump into credit cards. Let's do a subtopic here. Credit cards are kind of like a crutch. They're not meant to live on. They're meant to take on vacation. They're meant for unexpected emergencies when you don't have $800 cash sitting in your pocket. They're meant to get you from one month to the month, but they're meant to be paid in full. Are most of them? Heck no. I couldn't tell you a percentage or a statistic, but most of them aren't. But just because the majority says that's okay, it doesn't make it right. Credit cards are not designed to have outstanding, ongoing balances. Although I will tell you, probably every credit report I look at has usually ongoing outstanding balances. Credit cards, so does everybody follow me? Credit cards, and does everybody have, Miss Carol, have you went over at all credit cards or any of that? Miss Nylas?
Yeah, so a third of them have had a little bit.
So they kind of know, so everybody knows what a credit card is. It's unsecured. It's an unsecured card that has allowed you an allotment of money, $500,000, $2,000. This credit company has said, I entrust you with this card, which has so much money on it, and you are able to advance that money whenever you so desire. It's not discretionary, which means they can't just come in on a Tuesday morning and say, well, I just think you're using that for the wrong cause. It's able to be used pretty much anywhere as long as it's legal. Okay, so everybody understands the basics of a credit card? So what they're saying is if you're constantly living off of that $1,000 credit card month to month, You might be making a minimum payment. They all have a minimum payment, usually 1 to 2% of the balance. That's just not good. So we all understand that, correct? Okay, so that's what the second bullet is talking about. They're wanting to look at, and more so judge, but score how much you are depending. So what would be, so let's say you have an individual that has 5 credit cards, and there's nothing wrong with maybe having a couple. And if anybody has credit questions, please ask them, because I'd be more happy to try to answer them. But if you have 5 credit cards, and a lot of maturing adults do, for whatever odd reasons, and those all have large or significant or full balances on them, that's a concern. And so I'll switch gears and go back to my lender position. So if an applicant comes in and has 5 credit cards, and the credit report will show you your amount allowable, your allowable amount, and it'll show you your balance. And so if this individual has 5 $5,000 credit cards, and every one of them range from $3,000 to $5,000 that has been drawn on those cards, that would be a concern to me, wouldn't it? Yes. Aside from a very, very specific underlying issue. And we always, as I said, as a one-on-one lender to borrower, we always give a borrower that opportunity to explain maybe what went wrong. Usually it's medical driven, major catastrophe. Those are usually the top 2. But we give them that opportunity. But the big picture is that typically it just gives you a bad vibe. So try not to get to that point in life. And for some of you, you're going to struggle with managing those, whether at a young age or at a maturing adult age. So the third bulletin, how long is your credit history? So this is a great one. And to me, this one's pretty important. And I've got a cool story, just happened at a bank a few weeks ago. And it was interesting. I'll share it here in just a second. But how long is your credit history? So it's very basic what they're saying. Like I said, this is basic stuff, but it's the core. I'm not here just giving you the 101. This is really the nuts of it. So they want to know, so for individuals that just apply for credit, so say you get your first small credit card, and let's say you go to a bank, a year later, 8 months later, and apply for a small car loan, you don't have a real big window of history. So you may have a little bit of interaction with that credit card. You bought a little something here. You put your gas on it. You might have paid for your school books and paid that off the next month with maybe student loan money or grandma's gift money or your parents obviously helping you out, which I sure hope they all would. But they want to know how long is that. So an individual in their mid-20s compared to an individual in their early 40s, assuming that both have made their payments on time, have not depended on borrowed money a whole lot, they should have different scores, correct? One should be somewhat low. We're going to talk about scores here in just a second. One's going to be somewhat low, and obviously the person in maybe their early 40s, mid-40s, if everything's gone good, they should have a higher score. I mean, generally speaking, they should. Okay, so they want to know how long is your credit history. So as you evolve in life, as you do more things, you're naturally going to build a higher credit score based on sub-bullets here that we're going over. Number 4, have you applied for new credit recently? So this is another big one, and we see this a lot. So they want to know how many times are you going out and looking for new credit. You'll see this, I'll tell you, this is kind of a variable because it happens at different points in your life. So one of the top reasons I'm here is because as you graduate, you're going to get bombarded by a lot of student loan offers. I remember I did a long time ago. You'll get tons of them in the mailing because you're going to be in the system. They're going to solicit you because you're prime targets. Because other than me here talking, and obviously some courses in your senior year, you're really vulnerable. You just don't know a lot about credit and how this stuff works. So you're going to get a lot of that. The more you apply for those are what they call obviously inquiries. You're inquiring for credit. Typically in your point in life, as I've said, they're going to be student loans. So they're going to show up. So if you go out there, if any of you have applied for student loans so far, and some of you probably have if you're pre-planning, I'm not sure if there's dates that you do that type of stuff, but if you pull your credit report, you may see some of those inquiries. The businesses may not always match up because sometimes they go under different subsidiaries and it gets complicated in the business world, but they will show up, and at some point you will notice this. So another point in life is probably when you go to college, or maybe in the middle of your college, or maybe upon college graduation, you're going to update your automobile. So you're going to go out, you're going to want a fancier vehicle because, by gosh, you got a good education now and you're going to earn $12 an hour instead of $4. But you're going to go out and you're going to shop for vehicles. So you go to a dealership. Dealerships are great. They enable a lot of people to do good things. They have kind of an easy credit system. But what they do is they work with multiple large lenders over the nation. And so they're going to plug your little one-page application that you scribbled down in the lobby. They're going to plug that into their database. They're going to shoot that out from 6 to 10 lenders. Those 6 to 10 lenders, now mind you, remember, you're sitting in a lobby in Kansas City. They're shooting these out to lenders all over. And so those lenders aren't looking at you in the face. What are they going to do first? They're going to pull your credit report. Generally speaking, depending on what point you are in life, you may have no credit, which we'll talk about too. Or you may have marginal credit, or you may have really good credit. But they're not going to give you that chance. Remember, once again, as I just said, they're not going to see you. They're going to judge you, and they really judge you when it comes to credit. And they're going to either deny it or not deny it. But when they shoot that out to all those different lenders, those are all different inquiries. Any one of those lenders that pulls your credit, that's going to show up on your credit report. Okay? So those are all inquiries. The third largest one that you're going to have is probably in maybe your late 20s, early 30s, mid-30s. You're going to hopefully try to buy a home at some point in time. And not everyone will. A lot of people are very humble renting, and that's perfectly fine. Maybe less responsibility, access, whatever. But you're possibly going to go out and buy a home. Generally, when you buy a home, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to go out, you're going to apply with hopefully 2 to 3 different institutions because you want to see which one has the best interest rate, which one has the lowest closing cost, which one gives you the best offer, which one do you prefer, interaction-wise, which one do you get along. Most generally, people will apply at a few different places. So you're going to have all those inquiries. So you guys are kind of understanding what I'm talking about, right? You go out, you apply, these things come on. So the more you do that, unfortunately, a lot of those do affect your credit because they tell the system that, hey, this person's out here, they're seeking, they're searching for credit. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't judge people by that. Those are things that we do look at. If maybe your credit isn't that good, we'll look at that and we give the person the chance to explain. Says, hey, I just went down to Kansas City. I went to 2 dealerships. Man, they shot my information all over the world. Yeah, I remember they said this, and there'd be like 8 of them. I'm like, wow. And they end up, coming back to us or something, which is great. But, so anyways, and then the 5th one, how many and what types of credit accounts do you have? So this is another huge one. I do like this one, even though it's last. It probably should be almost second, probably. But how many and what types? So obviously, how many? That's not rocket science. Do you have like 40 different credit things? So that'd be like 5 credit cards and 3 car loans and a home loan. Just a bunch of, maybe you got your toy loan for your 4-wheelers or ski-doos. They want to know how many do you have. Doesn't mean that more is bad. It probably just means that less is better. I don't really have the magic number. But the magic number that I do have, and this is a fact that the bureaus like, I guess I didn't talk about the bureaus, but I'll explain what I mean by bureaus in a second as well. But what they do like is they want you to have a home loan, which is called a mortgage loan. It's a mortgage account. They want you to typically have an automobile loan, which is a consumer loan. We're all consumers in here. We're not big commercial business people or whatnot. They want you to have an automobile loan. They typically want you to have a credit card. A charge account credit card, typically credit card. Which, remember, once again, credit cards, I'm entrusting you with unsecured money on a card that you can advance. You haven't pledged anything to me. Okay? So, they want you to have that nice mix. One, you need somebody?
Jagger, Reese, I need you.
You're expelled. Take your books. Take your books. See, he was even hiding in the middle of those.